me, like when I thought about rock bottom, I wrote down spiritual brokenness. For me, I didn't grow up in the church, but there was something about where I was in that point in time where I felt spiritually broken. I didn't know who I was as a man. I didn't know who I was as a husband. I mean, I was just out of answers. And at that point, I had lit. That's to me the definition of I had come to the end of myself. I had my hand up. I was sitting on the curb, going, I don't know what else to do.
Welcome to the Miracle Hill podcast, where we share raw stories and have honest conversations that display the anatomy of God's grace here at Miracle Hill Ministries. We hope that these conversations uplift, encourage, inspire, and deepen your walk of faith, and expand your compassion for the last, the least, and the lost. Welcome back to the Miracle Hill podcast. In this episode, we will discuss what a life of addiction looks like from the perspective of those actively in addiction. Ryan and I sit down with Andy Wood, a close friend of Ryan's and an Overcomer graduate himself, to help shed light on the lifestyles that are inhabited by those in active addiction and to discuss ways to break through to those in the throes of addiction. Let's jump into the conversation.
Andy, welcome to the show. If you don't mind, just take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself, your relationship with Miracle Hill, and your relationship with Ryan.
Yep. So, again, my name is Andy. I'm up here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So, my relationship with Miracle Hill is I actually went through the Overcomers program back in 2013. Wonderful place. Can't say enough good things about it, but went through the program, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about, family and whatnot. And along the way, got to meet Ryan. He was actually running the program when I was there, and we connected on a couple different levels. So, when you meet somebody and you just kind of have a rapport with them, which we did. That was something that we just continued to build on. And then actually out of the program, since I've been out, I graduated like in January of 2014, and we've stayed in touch ever since then. Have gotten together a few times since, but I consider him a dear friend.
Andy, I would say ran, but ran would be the wrong descriptive. Andy walked with me through my first marathon. Ran through mile. I ran the first 20. Andy, you popped in at mile 5, I think illegally. So he was there to just hang out with me.
Okay.
Maybe illegally.
Maybe illegally. And then I made it to like mile 20 and essentially walked the rest of it. Very little running.
You said first marathon. How many have you run since?
Many.
I
don't know.
What about you, Andy? Have you done any more illegal running since then?
He's crazy. So I've not done any illegal running of marathons. I've done illegal running of a few half marathons. I have since scaled back to the half variety because I've realized that full marathons bring injury into play. And as a father and someone who needs to go to work every day, I can't be injured. So
Those
are also known as excuses, Mike.
That too.
Our excuses don't define us, Andy. Just out of curiosity, before we go further into these questions, what was life at Overcomers like for you while Ryan was leading the show over there?
Well, so I tell this story in a few different ways. To some people, it was, I'll say to some people, let's just say life was, wow. It was enjoyable on some levels and very unenjoyable on other levels. On one level, it was very enjoyable because given the situation at the time, I was able to take a 7-month break from life. That was one of the main reasons why I voluntarily went down there, because I had a hard time getting sober and finding myself, even in a short amount of time, kind of living the day-to-day life. So on one level, it was enjoyable because it was a break. But on the other hand, it was not all that enjoyable because, if you're familiar with overcomers, you're in amongst other people that are strangers at first. But then that quickly changed as I made some relationships with people, got to know some people. And I would say for me, within about probably 3 or 4 weeks or so, I really came to enjoy it on both sides. The fact that I was able to take a break from life, but then I was able to, start to kind of walk arm in arm with some other guys that were going through the same thing I was.
Yeah. How has life changed for you since you've left Overcomers?
It has changed. It has completely changed. So I am able to live an honest life now. Before I went to Overcomers, as many people that are, in addiction and have had experience living in addiction, it's a life of, I would say, dishonesty most of the time, on a personal level, most likely a professional level. And so for me, that's where really the biggest change has been is now I am able to live day to day and just be honest with both myself and my family and everything else. And that's kind of where it starts, and then it just cascades. The benefits just cascade from there.
This season, we're really doing kind of a deep dive in this theme of counterfeit peace and what it means to sort of chase counterfeits over the true peace that can be found in Christ. One of the main themes of that is a life of addiction. Would both of you just take a moment to kind of describe what a life of addiction actually looks like from your perspective as someone who has lived it, but then also someone who's on the other side of it as well? Andy, I'll let you take it first if you don't mind.
Sure. So the perspective of someone who is living in active addiction,
Yeah.
wow. I've been thinking about this and, you could go a couple of different ways, but really, honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is just, kind of hell, honestly. I know we're going to get to it in a moment, but, in that time period of active addiction, it's, you're jumping from one fire to the next. It's from one quasi emergency to the next. It's from one disaster to the next. Now there are a little respites of kind of, I would call them kind of peace along the way. But what I've learned now, having the perspective of being able to look back on it, even those moments that I thought were peace weren't really. It was just kind of the clock ticking until the next emergency happened or until the next thing kind of blew up. So, I could talk for hours on that, but basically I would just say, it's kind of hell, honestly, because everywhere you turn, it's just the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and there is no peace, from my perspective in it. And then what was the second part of the question?
I think let's just park on that for a moment. I'll let
Okay.
Ryan comment, and then we'll come to the next part of the question. Because I think that's one of the things is just, what does it look like when you're currently in it?
Right.
Yeah, Ryan, what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that I answer it two different ways depending on if I'm answering it as who I am now
Yeah.
versus answering it in the moment.
Okay.
Right. So in the moment, um, it's normal.
Hmm.
It is defined by chaos, but I don't know that you even recognize the chaos.
Right.
But that is just a regular running theme. Matter of fact, I was talking to somebody that I've known for 15 years that's stuck in addiction right now, and everything that is coming out of this person's mouth is how everybody else is at fault and how the world is out to get them.
Right.
And for this person, that is very real, right? Now it's a bunch of justification and lies and hogwash. But in the moment, that feels very real, that the world is out to get you, that nothing you can do or nothing you do changes anything or has any value. and it's a perpetual state of panic. I think that what I would maybe say different than what Andy said is the only times that you're not in that perpetual state of panic is when you're inebriated.
Right.
Right. And then you have this perception of calmness that's not there. On this side of it, looking back on it, it truly is just living insane. It is insanity.
Yeah.
In every way, shape, or form. Andy's description is great. It is a living hell. But I don't think you see that while you're in the midst of it, until you get to a place where you're ready to see it. And then you're like, what am I doing?
Right.
But still don't know how to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seems like there has to be some moments of peace, or what seems like peace in there, or else no one would continue to live that way. Right. So, to your point, Ryan, I think obviously there's that moment when one is inebriated where it's like, it sort of calms down and then
Quiets.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. And at that moment, that's what I suppose would propel someone to continue living a life like that. On the other side, you guys are both outside of that realm now, and now you're looking at people who in some way, shape, or form you can treat, or you can help, or you can move them along. What does it look like now? And I think, Ryan, you kind of answered this for you, and honestly, I think, Andy, you kind of answered this as well. Is it sort of looking back on it, it's like it seems like a hell. How would you reach out to someone who is currently living in it and try to get them to see that same perspective, even though it may be difficult for them?
you want to jump in first, Andy, or you want me to tackle it?
You go ahead. I've got some thoughts, but man, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to note that we can't change anybody.
Right.
Right. Like that is
Exactly.
super important to note, that there are things that we can do to try to influence someone, to try to speak truth to them, to try to love them in the midst of their garbage. But at the end of the day, I can't change anyone. So what do you do? I think that one of the things that we do at Miracle Hill that is common in essentially every recovery realm, whether it's AA or NA or Celebrate Recovery or Alcoholics Victorious or Pick Your Poison, whatever kind of recovery group, it's the non-judgmental acceptance of someone, which is super important. If you're stuck in addiction, you're expecting everyone to be on the attack.
Right.
And so for somebody to say, hey, I'm just going to sit here with you in your garbage and your filth and love you anyways, I think that's got to be the starting point. I think that what's hard for this conversation, and I'll pass it to Andy, is that for so many people, it's somebody that they love and their relationships are already defined, right? Like it's your child or your parent or a best friend that already have these relational realities in the midst of it. And it's hard to get that non-judgmental attitude when you are laying judgment because you're mad or you're sad for the person. And there's kind of some secret sauce in there to the stranger who comes alongside you that doesn't judge you and whom you do not feel judged by,
Right.
just because of their existence. What would you add, Andy?
Yeah, no. Where you started is where I was going to start. You know, when I think about that, what would I do? The first thing that comes to my mind is, well, there's two things simultaneously. Is number one, I can't do anything about it. As far as, you know, I can't yell at them. I can't scare them. I can't threaten them. I can't all those things because that's already been done before. And they are most of the time in that place. Speaking for myself in that place, there was nothing you could do that was going to necessarily stop me from doing what I was going to do. I would say the other piece of that is, yeah, like what Ryan said, is just love them unconditionally. You know, that's the one thing that you can do is come alongside them and sit down and say, I am here. You're not going to scare me away. You're not going to run me off. I am here. And don't judge them because to Ryan's point, that's been done, and they have that defense mechanism and kind of the understanding, I guess, that everybody's going to be out to get them, and that everybody's going to be against them. So to have somebody that's just willing to come alongside them and just sit in it with them, and just, it's time. You build that relationship. You put your arm around them and say, I'm going to love you well. But the other thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to enable you. I'm not.
Right.
That like with what Ryan said, you know, the stranger, I think there's a ton of power in that, because there is no prior relationship. There is no baggage. There is no history. There is no nothing. That is just someone that can literally sit there and listen. Because with family relations and other relationships, there's baggage, there's history, there's expectations, there's emotions that are all wrapped up into that. And that can make it hard, understandably so, just to kind of get to the spot where you need to get to again, where it's you got to let them kind of hit the bottom, you know, and that's a scary place to be too, because I have to love you, but I have to love you enough to know that, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from you if you're going to make a bad decision or whatnot, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to love you. They have to know that. They have to know that.
Yeah.
An unconditional love doesn't mean not having boundaries.
Right. Of course.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right. You can have unconditional love and really firm boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you just said, Andy, especially about, you know, not going to do something for someone. I think that leads into this next question. Like, how does someone actively in the throes of addiction come to a place where they recognize the need for help and change? Like, at what point, how do they get there? And I'll bleed this into the next question too, because I think they go together. Can that come on its own, or do external pressures contribute to that in some capacity? Either one of you want to take it, go for it.
Yeah. So I'm going to add the third question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
The question below
yeah.
that is, what is there a rock bottom?
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's start from that philosophical perspective. So I do not like the terminology rock bottom.
Yeah. There's always you can always go farther.
Yep.
Right.
There's always a further bottom. Right. So, I mean, how many people in recovery groups right this second while we're talking have hit rock bottom 7 times?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So then clearly the first 6 times were not rock bottom.
Right.
So, again, I just don't like the terminology, and I don't like the application of it. So if I've hit rock bottom, then I believe that I'm done and there's nowhere further to go. And it's almost, there's an immunity from doing further damage to yourself. So I don't know that there's a clear black and white answer to your question though.
Right.
Right. Like, how does somebody get to the end of themselves? I think it's different for everybody. I think that where it could be financial pressure for one person, it could be relational pressure for another. I do think that the true answer to that is void of external pressure, but it's often external pressure that gets you to a place where you're even wrestling with it to get to the internal answer. So if you go to Overcomers right this second, there's 80 guys in the building. What percentage of those 80 men are there because of their kids or a judge or grandma or their wife? It's a high number.
Right.
Right? Like, it's a large percentage that some external force has gotten them to that place. But it is in the wrestling of that end of yourself idea that you come to the recognition that you are at the end of yourself. Then change can begin.
Right.
I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit.
No, all good stuff. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because something that was fairly common for me when I was in the Overcomer Center was when I would have the conversation with people, and they would at some point come to during the conversation, at some point they would come to the realization that I didn't have to be there. And they'd say, you can leave right now? And I'd say, yeah, I can leave right now. And they'd say, why are you here? And I said, well, because I need to be here. And so there were some people, like Ryan said, that were there because of some external pressures that, necessitated that they needed to be there. For me, I had literally come to the end of myself, and I didn't know what else to do. And so I had heard about overcomers from someone else, and as bad as like, it's the duality of, like, I knew I needed to go, but I kind of didn't want to go, but I kind of wanted to go. It was this weird space that I got to, but I knew that nothing else was working and I needed to try something else. When I thought about rock bottom, I agree with Ryan. Like, I tell people that, that I come across and that I work with and that I'm around, that, rock bottom is kind of when you don't live anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to be blunt about it, but when I talk to people, I'm like, look, I honestly hope you get it before you don't have an opportunity to get it. And that's a sobering thought in and of itself, because I think a lot of times, that kind of is part of this, what we're talking about right now, is that a lot of times, you don't have a problem until the money runs out. You don't have a problem until somebody's telling you what you got to do. You don't have a problem until you're in handcuffs or whatever it is, right? A lot of us run from that for years.
Right.
And the rock bottom, in a sense, can be any number of things. But for me, like, when I thought about rock bottom, I wrote down spiritual brokenness. For me, I didn't grow up in the church, but there was something about where I was in that point in time where I felt spiritually broken. I didn't know who I was as a man. I didn't know who I was as a husband. I mean, I was just out of answers. And at that point, I had lit. That's to me the definition of, I had come to the end of myself. I had my hand up. I was sitting on the curb going, I don't know what else to do. And as folks living in addiction, we're pretty darn resourceful. We can find the money, we can find the this, we can find that, but eventually, man, it all runs out, and we don't have any other answers. So, so for me, that was it. It was the spiritual brokenness, and I didn't even really realize it at the time, but now, being able to look back on it, I see that is actually what it was.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, because we do have this idea in our head that rock bottom is like a place that we can somehow get to. But you're right, Andy. It really is, rock bottom is the finitude of death, and there's always somewhere further that we can fall. Um, yeah, like when someone's in that state, it's such a pivotal time, and how we treat those individuals in that moment matters the most. And I think this applies not just to those who are counselors at Overcomers or who are in a program outside, but like, how can the person listening, how can they counsel someone who's in that state where they've come to the end of themselves and they're trying to figure out what to do next to sort of pick up the pieces of their life?
The first thing that comes to my mind is put the shovel down and quit digging.
Okay.
I had
What do you
somebody
mean
tell,
by that? Yeah.
yeah, I had somebody tell me that one time, and I mean, that's a metaphor, but it's absolutely true. Like, you know, in that moment, just stop doing what you're doing. You just have to let the dust settle before you can figure out what your next move needs to be. Um, in those moments, I understand that, like for me, when I got to the end, I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't sure what it was. So in that moment, it was, I don't need to go back to what I used to do. Because, when I thought I had hit that place, what I would do, I didn't have an answer. So I would go back out and go get, alcohol or whatever it may be. And I think that's just our normal MO, is when we run out of, or we feel like we run out of options and we don't have any answers, to Ryan's earlier point, we're going to go, self-medicate with whatever it is, just to get rid of those thoughts, to numb that feeling. So I tell people, or I would tell somebody, just put the shovel down, quit digging, stop. Let's just pause, right? Because I think that's one thing too, as as folks in addiction, the people that I know that are in addiction, and in myself included, like, we're really resourceful people, right? We can always figure our way out of whatever it may be. We can always come up with an answer, but there comes a time and a place where you just need to stop and pause, because hopefully that then leads to asking for help. Because obviously my plan wasn't working. I need a new plan. But in that moment, I think it's okay to tell. It's proper, I think, to tell people and to assure them it's okay just to stop. Take a day or two and just let the dust settle and just kind of pause, because we're just so used to one fire to the next fire to the next fire to the next fire. It's important to just rest and then maybe think and reassess the situation, and then hopefully seek outside counsel, somebody that knows what they're doing, has been there, done that, and can help give you some wise counsel versus continuing to do what it is that you're doing or have been doing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's also like really countercultural advice to like just pause, and to assess where you are. Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
I would add so I think it depends on who you are in the relationship.
Right.
Right. But I think it's fair to make the assumption that anybody that's considering trying to help someone has some skin in the game. They love that person. They care about that person. They're related to them in some way, shape, or form. I think the first thing that the helper needs to do is assess their own motives, right? Like, why are you wanting to insert yourself in this? And or what am I doing to contribute to this? I think in all my years working at Miracle Hill, the hardest conversations I ever have are with moms, right? Like the mom says, "Hey, help my baby boy, help my baby girl." And a lot of the times mom is contributing in some way, shape, or form to the continued behavior. I'll tell a quick story. We used to have a guy named Ken Kelly that worked for Miracle Hill for like 20 years. And Ken got a call one day from a mom, and she said, "Reverend Kelly, I need you to help my boy. My boy's been drinking, and he won't leave the house. All he does is go to the liquor store and come back." And Reverend Kelly picked up something in this lady's voice, and he said, "Ma'am, how old are you?" And she said, "Well, I'm 85." And he says, "Well, how old is your son?" And he's 65. Like if as long as he has somewhere to go and live and somebody's going to pay all his stuff, why is he going to do anything different? Right. Like he's going to keep doing what he wants to do. So I think we need to check our own motives. We need to see how we are enabling in the situation. And then if all the roads are clear, I think part of what I would add to what Andy's saying is a lot of times in addiction, we can't see the truth of our life. And so helping someone to really come face to face with who they really are and what their life really is can help spur on an internal desire to do something different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think and I'm going to skip down a question or two kind of with this one and then come back. It seems like if you're, to use the example of the mom, right, or a family member or a close friend, and you're looking at someone who's in this place, you have the best interest in, and you want to see them seek recovery or seek help or to do something. But you're right. Sometimes we're actually probably contributing to factors that are making it harder. So what can a mom do, or what can a brother do? What can they do to help, but then maybe also to step out of the way and love from a distance and let others sort of step in?
Yeah, let me go back to Miracle Hill and Overcomers, or people helping in general. So I used to have this saying that I would use in all the years that I was a counselor at Overcomers and then eventually director at Overcomers. Here's the saying: "I'd rather you hate me and live than love me and die."
Right.
Okay. So it's the idea that I am in a position that I am going to speak truth to you, and it may be painful and you are not going to like some of it. But my job is to help you to see you and to figure out how to do something with who you really are. And it's a painful, to Andy's point earlier, it's a painful process. coming face to face with yourself and really dealing with that. And so as a I want to say neutral third party, but that's not neutral, because I want what's best for the person, even if they're a stranger too.
Yeah, of
So
course.
a caring third party, non-related third party, and someone who understands addiction both personally and professionally, um, then I feel not only okay with saying hard truths, but I feel a responsibility to speak hard truths. Where family members, that's often very challenging
Yeah.
for family members. Not just challenging to say it because they care about the person, but challenging to see the truth in the midst of it. Like they want to believe baby boy who's 65 and living at home that he's going to play for the Yankees one day.
Right.
Right. Like they're struggling to see the truth. So I think your question was, what can the person do to
Yeah.
assist?
Yeah, of course.
I think you combine everything that we've already said. You love them well,
Right.
regardless of their filth and brokenness. Then you try to help them to see the truth of their situation. And then finally, you try to point them towards people who are that neutral professional on the outskirts that can assist.
Yeah. That seems really like a hard balance, right? You've got love well, or love almost unconditionally, don't judge, and then
Draw
from
firm boundaries.
yeah, if it's set firm boundaries, tell hard truths, and then point outside. And I know from the perspective of someone who's not in addiction, but from the other side, say the mother or the brother, that's often very, very hard to do. Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what he said, but for me, it's hey, I would tell mom or brother or whoever, like, just get them pointed in the right direction as far as offer them, connect them with the professionals and then get out of the way in a sense. Because, one of the things that I find very gratifying when I talk to somebody else that's in the midst of it is I've got the street cred, right? I've been there. I've done
Right.
that. I'm just going to tell you what happened to me, and you can take it and run with it as far as you want, or you can ignore it. That's fine. But odds are, brother or mother, most likely probably doesn't have that history. So I would say for those folks, to kind of number one, safeguard them, because they don't want to get into something that then they can't extricate themselves from. But it's best just to plug them in with the resources and then let the professionals, handle it. Because it just stands to reason to me that they're just so involved. It's going to be hard for them to be objective. It's going to be hard for them to tell that person those hard truths, what Ryan was just saying. And that is absolutely what us in addiction need to hear. We have to confront and be confronted with the honest truth, or else we're never going to get it. Period.
We're also making in our scenario that we're tossing around, we're making an assumption.
Oh, of course.
That mom or brother or whoever we're talking about is stable.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
For so many of our friends who are struggling in addiction, those are all using partners. There is no stable relationship. Yeah. So they're stuck in this chaos of addiction, and so is everybody that they see. And there is no voice in the midst. So it really has to start with like an internal voice wanting something different, or an external pressure that comes in the form of the police or the homelessness and a rescue mission or something like that.
Yeah.
Which greatly complicates. But here's the but in that. When the Lord is able to insert somebody who is stable, who will love them unconditionally, who will speak truth, that voice is so different from the others. Just like Jesus's voice is so different from all of us, that it's easy to hear how different it is. And there's something very attractive about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I noticed something, and being on usually the side of the camera and not necessarily sitting in front of it, I get to hear stories from individuals who've come through our programs, and One of the things that I've noticed, and I noticed it in your conversation earlier, Andy, was that it seems like programs like Overcomers, like people just kind of know about it, right? Like it's not necessarily that they have to seek it out. It's almost like there's this sort of internal like conversation amongst other people who are struggling, or maybe someone who's gone through it. And that so there's this sort of like there's this movement, I guess, within those things where you sort of hear about it. And it's a seed that's like planted and sort of manifest in your mind for a while before you finally take action on it. Um, when someone has that seed planted, and if they're thinking about getting help, what do they go, what is their next step? Like how would you instruct them? Like what would you tell them to do under those circumstances? Like it's there and they're thinking about it. What do they need to do next? Like what is the next step for them? Do they just show up at a facility, or is there someone they should speak to? Like how does that work?
I mean, I'll let Ryan speak to that as far as the nuts and bolts of it to
Yeah.
a degree. But I'll tell you one thing: when you were making that statement, to me, it is I heard about the program from somebody else that their son went through the program, I believe, and their son was successful. And so, I feel like it's no different than if I've got the answers to something, man, I want to see somebody else that's struggling find that answer. And so for me, the people that I run across, come into contact with, or what else in those circles that are struggling mightily, because most of us that end up down there, or even in any other type of program, it's not our first go round. So I think to have something that really worked and to be able to speak to it on a personal level, I want to share that with people. I don't want to keep that to myself.
Yeah.
Because I want other people to be able to experience that. Now, that's no guarantee that they can go down there, because I knew plenty of people that went down there and for whatever reason just weren't ready, I would say. So when, it's like, and that is the same thing I would say about my faith, right? I don't have a problem sharing my faith when it comes up, because to me, it's like the answer. So I want people to have the answers. I don't want people to struggle if they don't have to struggle. So when the opportunity arises, I tell everybody I know about, Overcomers. Now, a lot of times when they hear it's 7 months, they, recoil at that a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely a fantastic place, and I'd, highly recommend it. So, but I'll let Ryan talk about the whole nuts and bolts of how you would do it.
Yeah, I don't think I'll hit the nuts and bolts. I think that I'll
Okay.
say that what is common to all recovery places is just show up,
Yeah.
right? Like in AA, which is, the oldest of them all. When you come the first time, you get the white chip, right? And that white chip is a big deal, right? Like, and they make it a big deal,
Yeah, of course.
right? Because just showing up is like the most important principle of all of recovery, right? Like if you just keep showing up, God can do something, but you got to get there. So yeah, there are some different ways you can get to different programs, and there's online applications, and there's interview processes, and there's all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, man, if you're struggling with addiction, the next step is to show up somewhere.
Right.
And I promise you, the recovery community, whether it's faith-based or not, is going to get you where you need to go.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite lines, when I was there, when we went through pre-program, there was a gentleman there, great man. There was somebody in my pre-program class, and he would ask him pretty regularly every day, "What are you going to do?" And he would say, "Whatever it takes, whatever it takes." And that, when you get to that point, like Ryan said, I'm just going to show up, and I'm just going to do whatever it takes to get in the door, to get in the program, to do whatever it is. When you finally come to the end of yourself and you're willing to do whatever it takes because you want it so bad, just show up, take action. And then like Ryan said, the community will put their arms around you and figure out a way to do whatever it is that's needed. But you got to get to that point first.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It's like the scripture where it says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." Like if you there's the requirement that you have to taste, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to step foot into the facility to see it for its fullness
Well,
and
and it's Jesus's instructions, follow me,
follow. Yeah, yeah,
right? Like you got to take a step,
yeah,
follow me.
yeah. That's really beautiful. Andy, hey, can you describe for us what true peace looks like to you now in this current state of life?
Yeah. Man, I mean, that's a wonderful question. To me, it's very simple. It's it's the peace. So it's different. I'm gonna say, forget what the scripture is. I'm not a theologian by any sense. But it's the peace that surpasses all understanding, that kind of deal. Um, you know, it's not quite on that level, but it's pretty close. And the reason I say that is because to me, being now 10 years sober, the peace is just knowing in one sense, it's my key's going to fit the door. My wife's going to be at home when I get home. I know where everything is. You know, it's a very boring life. When I talk to people that don't know my past, in the history, and they say, "How's life?" and I say, "It's pretty boring, but I love it." And they have no idea because my life used to be chaos. And so now the peace to me, it's just very simple. It's just very, kind of ho hum. Again, kind of boring, but there's so many layers to that because the perspective that I have on life now, I think about it all the time. You would think that, well, once in recovery and once you've had, a decent amount of time of recovery, maybe you don't think about it often. I think about it all the time. Um, just the other day, I'm riding down the road. I'm going to a friend of mine's house here in town, and I see a couple of guys sitting on the curb. They were taking a break from their job, and I remember working a job where I was in the landscape business, and that's where I took my breaks. It was on the curb. It was at a gas station. It was whatever. But immediately when I think about those times, I think about all the chaos that was wrapped around it.
Mm.
I go right back to the days of going to work, getting off early, all those things that I used to do that I shouldn't have been doing. So like for me, the piece is just the knowing that things kind of are where they're going to be and there's going to be stability in my life. But then also the piece is just the lack of chaos in that perspective of just, again, all the time I am confronted with and I see these little things and I don't point them out, right? Because most of the time there's nobody around. But even if there is, I'm not going to share every little detail with people, but it's just I can instantly go back to a time and a place, most of the time, multiple times in places where I'm like, man, I just shake my head and I kind of grin a little bit and I go, man, that was a wild time. And I'm just so grateful that I'm not there anymore. And I don't have to live that. It's like I can feel my palms get clammy. I can feel my chest get a little bit tight. And then I can take a step back and I can go, man, I am so glad I'm not there anymore. So that to me, there's kind of two pieces of that piece. Um, it is wonderful. Highly recommended.
I love that.
Highly
You
recommended.
you just endorsed a boring, peaceful life,
Love it.
which is great.
Highly. 10 out of 10. A boring life. Yes.
Um, how have you in these 10 years, by the way, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing. How have you maintained that peace over these years?
So, what I have done is I would say it's for the people that are listening, it's not some kind of mystery. It's not some kind of rocket science plan. Really, it's a bit of trial and error. It's a bit of learning what works for you. And so to me, I have a toolkit, kind of the way we talk about it, right? I have tried different things and I know what works for me. When I get in certain situations, I know what works, and I know what doesn't work. And the only way I've gotten there is by a bit of trial and error, but also too, going through overcomers and learning a lot about my family of origin, the things I used to do and all those other things that equipped me with the tools. So then once I, moved outside of the program, I had the opportunity to really pick up those tools and use them on a day-to-day basis. And while they all kind of work to varying degrees, some of them work better than others. So for me, I know there's a couple of different things that I can go to. I deal with a lot of anxiety. I had no idea that I did, but I deal with a lot of anxiety. And so, the things that have helped to keep me sober also help to keep me, to kind of deal with that. And then all of that kind of bleeds over in just a day-to-day life, the way I used to deal with problems and situations and whatnot, in unhealthy ways. Now I have that toolkit that allows me to, deal with those, take them on, pause, and run through, the tools that I know that work, that keep me sober. And then there's also too, it's not totally black and white. I also know that, given the wrong set of circumstances in an hour, I can be back in that place. I am not naive or cocky enough to realize that, what, I'm forever never going back to that place. In my mind, mentally, I'm not going back through that door. I think it has to start there. You have to decide that you're not going back through that door. But I also understand and am, again, not naive to think that given the wrong circumstances, it's an active thing. It is like AA, one day at a time. It is absolutely that. But I'm grateful for that too, because I don't live in the future, nor do I live in the past. I live in the day to day.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, living a present life and being aware of both is very, I think, essential for anyone who's in that space. Ryan, what about you? How have you maintained peace
Yeah, I'm
throughout
writing
these
down my
years?
notes. Andy gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff in there, Andy.
Hold on, I got one more note.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I think that there's kind of four things in the secret sauce that the Lord's given me. Number one, stay close to him, right? Like,
Yes.
chase Jesus every single day. I had an aha moment while you were talking that even in the seasons now where I don't particularly feel close to the Lord, I am aware that I don't particularly feel close to the Lord, which means I'm still aware of my relationship with him, right? When there used to be whole seasons when I wouldn't even be aware.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I would forget that there was a God, or I would pretend like there wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think number one, most importantly, chase Jesus. Number two, I think that good recovery is defined by really being honest with yourself. When we're in addiction, we're not honest with others, and we're certainly not honest with ourselves. And I think that we have to always continue to pursue that internal honesty with ourselves about where we are, what we're doing, what our real motives are. How do we really feel? I'm using feel on purpose, or what do we really think? Which leads into point three, which is accountability. It is definitional to recovery. It is definitional to a pursuit of peace, that we keep people in our lives, that when we are honest with ourselves, that we are okay sharing that version of ourselves with someone else. And like you go to the book of Acts, right? You've got this big group. Then you got this small group of disciples. Then you've got this even smaller group of the people that were really close to Christ. And I think that is a model for all of us, that we should have, a church that we're living with and accountable to. Then we should have a smaller group of people that we kind of do life with. And then we have people that we really trust with who we are. The stuff that we're embarrassed about or feel shame about, and have an avenue to talk through those things. Then the last thing, and I don't know that I've ever would have said this on my list before right now, but something you said, Andy, if you're going uphill, you have to keep forward momentum or you come back downhill. And I agree with your boring life scenario, but I think that we should always be pursuing bettering ourselves, whether that is learning, or growing in some way, shape, or form. Because if we coast into monotony, we will become discontent and we'll start going back downhill.
Mhm.
So I think personal growth has got to be a trait that is pursued with some ferocity.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, to piggyback on what you just said there. No, that I absolutely believe that. I mean, the boring life is kind of, a bit of like a baseline because life used to be chaos for so long. But I absolutely agree that once you kind of get to a certain point in your recovery, it's, I have a son and he and I talk about this a lot, even kind of outside of recovery, but definitely in recovery, it's when you can make that switch from, I just am keeping the door closed and I'm trying like all get out to not go back through that door. Cause there's certainly a period of recovery where you're just, I can't go there anymore. And so being just outside the door with the door closed is good enough for now. Kind of the sooner the better you can get to this point where you can flip that then, and I can now live into what's good for me and what I enjoy and what is pleasant and something to look forward to. I think that then in of itself, if you're leaning into that, and that's kind of drawing you forward versus just trying not to go backwards, I think is really important because, now you said this to me a long time ago, and I use this still all the time. Like, you're going to jeopardize all of this for that. Like you told me that one day, you're like, you literally going to jeopardize all of these good things that you have going for you and will have going for you for this. And in that moment, we both knew that, like, well, the answer was, well, yeah, I did it all the time. Didn't make any sense, right? But now living in recovery, I'm living into all of this, right? And if I go back to that, I don't get this. So I'm leaning into that. And I think that is, by far a more healthy mindset, because then you're, just being kind of pulled forward versus like treading water and trying not to go backwards. That's something that's like the white knuckling, you can only do that for so long. Nobody is that strong forever. And that's just no way to live. Right. I want to live forward into that to get to go and improve myself and improve my family and learn and grow and build and do all these things. And then in that, I tend to kind of not necessarily totally forget, but the other stuff kind of recedes into the background and I'm living more of a full life. So I think the sooner you can get to that, the better off you're going to be.
The interesting thing is the life of recovery doesn't stop at the end of a program. It's something that just continues. And even when you're trying to live a boring life, you still have to like maintain it, right? Like you still have to go after it. Earlier in this episode, we talked briefly about you guys being runners and the idea of running. And I think that relates not just to recovery, but also to the Christian life altogether. Like Paul uses that analogy over and over and over again of being runners in a race and striving towards the end goal. How would you guys relate your love for running to the life of recovery? Do either of you see it that way?
So, wow, I love the analogy of running the race, because so when I was in the Overcomer Center, there was a guy that was one of my roommates, and I could have sworn it was like a fortune cookie, but it wasn't a fortune cookie because I mean, there aren't fortune cookies that are Bible verses, right? Like that's not a thing. But there was a little strip of paper on the little cork board that we had. I think his mother must have given it to him, and it was that scripture about running the race. And that really spoke to me because I like to run. And so to me, there's a multi-layered piece to that, because I feel like as a runner, as somebody that likes to run, I'm never gonna, like, it's a continual thing. I'm never gonna get there, right? It's like a metaphor for life. Like I'm never gonna get there until I get there, right?
Right.
But between now and then, I just have to do it. It's something that I just do. And so running is something that I love because of multiple things. Number one, I get some personal time. I can throw on a podcast, I can throw on some music. I cannot listen to anything and just go out and run. And the endorphins and all that kind of good stuff, the being by myself, sometimes running with other people is enjoyable. And then also just the health aspect of it. I want to be healthy. And you know what? The honest truth is, like, I don't even know where I picked up running. Like, I remember years ago thinking about running and being like, why would I do that? And at some point I started to run. It was actually when I was still in addiction, right? I wasn't even too down to the Overcomer Center, to kind of my last kind of deal there. When I showed up there, I'd been running for a while. So it's not like running like totally solved all my problems, but I mean, for me, really, it's about just that time. I get to just go, and I tell people it just kind of quiets the noises in my head, which is kind of funny to say, because when I run, like, I'm totally in my head. So I don't know how that all works out. It's one of those things that, like, I don't really know exactly how it works. I just know that I love it. And also too, about like when I go to run, like the first mile kind of stinks. A lot of times when I run, like the first mile is like, why am I doing this again? But then once I get in, 7, 8 minutes in, and I start to find that rhythm and that cadence, it's a beautiful thing. Because then there's times where I can just turn my brain off and I just run. Life is busy, life is challenging, life is everything. And so when I run, it gives me the opportunity to kind of just have some time and do all those things. And then so, Ryan and I, as far as the running part. So one thing that I don't think has come up, but so when I was at Overcomers, right, like there's like the wake up call, right, at like 6 o'clock in the morning or something, 6:30, and everybody used to bellyache about the running, about the wake up call. Oh, we got to wake up early. And so, like in my former life, I was a golf course guy, so I'm used to getting up early in the morning anyhow. 4:30 in the morning. So like something that I used to do was get up and I'd go outside even when it was dark, and I would run around the back, around that wall. I don't think I was supposed to be out there at the time, but I was doing it. So it was like a mental thing. And I would go out there and run, and then I would come back in, and people were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I've been running." And they're like, "What? Why are you doing that?" So I was really grateful for the opportunity to do that, even though maybe I shouldn't have been doing it.
What about you, Ryan? How does running relate to recovery and your own story?
Yeah, everything Andy says, plus it is you versus you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nobody else in the equation, right? Other than the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go out there and I don't run, I have nobody to blame but myself. And if I go out there and I do run, I got nobody to blame but myself. And yeah, I absolutely love it. But I agree with Andy. It's often not fun, right? It's
Yeah.
often, certainly the first few miles aren't fun.
Mm-mm.
And often the rest of the miles aren't fun. But there is a task completion element to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am someone who has a deep need for solitude, not isolation. And I get it there and nowhere else in my life. There and when I'm sleeping. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It is if I will even say this. The seasons that I get out of the habit for an injury or whatever season of life, I can feel my mental health being poorer, my anxiety being higher, my stress being less manageable, my closeness to the Lord waning. And it is a habit I picked up in early recovery to quit smoking, frankly, and fell in love with it. So I love it, and I wish more people did it.
Yeah, that's great.
Have we sold you?
Have you guys sold me on running?
Yeah.
I really should get back in the habit now that I think about it. I used to bike. For me, biking was the thing.
Hey.
And it was kind of the same thing. It was like it was a moment to just be outside of myself, outside of my head, just go off. Didn't have to have music or a podcast or anything, just to be going and fighting my internal nature that wanted to just be sitting, or my legs that were telling me it was time to give in. So I think that's really strong advice for anyone that's there. Do either of you have any parting words? Again, the whole point of this particular episode is to really focus on identifying that false peace that exists, and then to getting to a place where we can see where true peace is and maybe lead in that direction. Andy or Ryan, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I would just say that if you're there, man, there's something better, right? Just show up. Wherever it is that you're supposed to show up, you need to just go show up, and you're not going to understand it, and it's going to be hard, and there's all kinds of things, but I promise you there's something better.
That's beautiful.
I would say if you're listening to this and you're thinking that you're there, you're there. Quit arguing with yourself. You know, rationalization and justification are two of our biggest enemies. Just give up. Give up. And the other thing is too, is that you know it. You know, I think you know it when you know it. You know, it's like you're kind of lying to yourself, you know. I know I did. I knew it was the end, but I just kept kicking the can down the road for various reasons, and it didn't make any sense.
That's really good. Thank you guys both for contributing to the show. Andy, thank you for being here. I just want to end this with to sort of land this runner analogy with the words from Paul from 1 Corinthians. He says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable." This is beautiful. And I think thank you guys again so much for being on this episode, and we hope you join in next time. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for joining us on the Miracle Hill podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. You can also visit us on our website, miraclehill.org, to find out more about us and how you can support us in our mission. We can't wait for you to join us again next time.